Hello everyone, welcome to this month's Pacecast. I'm Anita Pace and it's great to have you with us.
I'm delighted to welcome this month's guest, Dave Garness from the Garness Group. And the Garness Group is one of the region's largest property consultants. So welcome to our Pacecast, Dave.
Hello, Anita. Hi.
So as always, we've asked our guest on this occasion, Dave, to bring in something that's memorable, meaningful, and is going to be able to tell us a bit more about Dave and his background and his story. So I don't know what he's brought in, but hopefully it's going to be something that's going to just tell us a bit more about you.
Okay. I brought in two things. I brought a copy of a programme from a show jumping competition in 1982 from Hickstead, which was the British Centre for Show Jumping. And I brought that in because it reminded me of learning how to be determined, because at that time, whilst we had horses, we didn't have a horse box or a great deal of money to do what we wanted to do. And basically, to get to the British Championships without that sort of resource, I thought was a real achievement. I was probably not aware of it at the time, but I was learning how to sort of be determined and stick to the path and achieve something.
Okay, so we'll explore that in a second, because I'm interested in the whole show jumping. I never knew that about you, so thank you. And the second thing?
Second thing is a photograph from 1980, and it is of a football team, Beverley Town Boys Football Club, and that was one of the sort of happiest sort of times I had, and it also taught me a lot about teamwork. And we were very successful as a boys' football team. Several of the guys going on to be professionals, and it just taught me to be around sort of winners, and also that the fact that we achieved things is because we really enjoyed what we did. So it just taught me a lot about teamwork. And when I was having a think about today, I sort of reminisced in that respect.
Thank you for those stories. Very interesting. Didn't know you were so sporty. So very competitive, I'm guessing, as a youngster.
Yes.
And how did you get into, football's a natural sport for young boys and girls these days, I want to stress, and girls. Yeah. But show jumping, not so much. So was that because you had horses, or?
Well, it was influence of my stepfather. We moved to live with my stepfather when I was 9, and he had horses and always had done. A really interesting character, maybe a bit more about him later, because he was a positive influence. But he had horses, so kids being kids at that age in the 1970s, what was there you just sort of got on with. So it's a jump on sort of fairly rough and ready ponies without saddles and mucked about and all this sort of stuff, and then realised I maybe had a bit of ability in that respect.
Natural. So how, just to finish on that story then, so I'm intrigued, how did you get down to Hickstead without a horse box?
Well, again, another lesson, kindness of people in a lot of ways, because I was in that sort of environment. I had friends of a similar age. And when I look back, I just realised how kind they were. So they used to give me lifts everywhere. And my stepfather, which I mentioned before, was a real sort of dealer. He was a trader. So he'd be doing deals on he was a butcher and self-employed butcher. So he'd be doing deals on meat and cattle and all this sort of stuff, and getting lifts, for me. So we just sort of made it work. But I remember I would, because we lived in Beverley and the fields were near to Beverley, I would ride up to Norwood with my horse, get my mum or dad to drop off my kit on the side of the road, basically, and I'd sort of sit on Norwood with my horse, and then whoever was coming through would pull up, drop the ramp and stick my horse in and give me a lift.
I've got visions of you on the roadside with a horse waiting to be picked up.
Yeah. And if the shows were within reasonable proximity, I actually used to ride there to compete and then ride back home again.
Oh, horse. Must have been exhausted. Or is
no,
that,
it wasn't, because, when you're a kid, it isn't, is it? But I was encouraged by my parents to make things work, and
another good lesson.
Do what you need to do to make it work. Yeah.
So you talked about your stepdad being a big influence on you, and you mentioned there that he was a butcher, had his own business. So do you think that influence extended to you starting a business then? Yes,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I used to help in the shop, which was at the back of the house, and I used to go on deliveries where we used to deliver meat to customers, and I didn't get any wages for that, but I could keep the tips. So again, without me knowing it, it meant the service level had to be good. So if my service level was good, my manners were good, I would get good tips. It was as simple as that. And I was allowed to keep those. So I think I've always worked on commission in my life. That's how it's worked.
It does give you a lot of drive there.
Yeah, it does.
You're only getting paid on results. So, as a boy, you obviously went through school, and did you always have an entrepreneurial spirit then? Did you always think that you were going to start your own business, or did you have aspirations to do something else?
Don't think I knew I was going to start my own business, but entrepreneurialism wasn't a word used at that point. But I guess I was, because I used to sell the horse manure, so I'd illegally drive around on a dumper truck delivering that, but I would sell it, so it was free.
And did your dad suggest that to you, or was that something you came up with on your own? Stepdad, sorry.
I can't remember, if I'm being honest.
Right.
I mean, my dad was still around at the time, and actually he used to help me with that. So I really can't remember. I needed money, basically. And the other factor about the show jumping is that I got minimal pocket money, but I kept the winnings.
Right.
So the prize money I kept, which another incentive to achieve.
Incentive, yeah.
So there was I always had to earn it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you were learning some valuable lessons as a youngster then. So did you go to university after school, or did you do... No.
I think it's fair to say, and I hopefully I've been around long enough, I can admit I was an academic failure.
Right.
I struggled at school. I went briefly to the College of Building in Manchester, which was, again, being honest, was probably a downgrade from studying for a degree in property. But I didn't do very well at that and didn't last long. Very sadly at the time, my father died suddenly. So that was a bit of a life changer. And I then got a job. And my first job was with Peter Wiles. You may remember Peter Wiles as a company, but then he became different businesses and ultimately merged with Beer Cox now. So I went and got a job there.
So that was your initial route into property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I suppose you accidentally got into property. And I think from a lot of these interviews I've done with business owners, founders, there's quite often not a plan. A lot of people, very successful business people, go through the education system without perhaps knowing what they're going to do with longer term. And it's interesting as well that you didn't go down a university route, because I think that's a common trait as well. I think you don't have to necessarily be academically very strong to be successful. And I think it's great that there are other opportunities now from an educational point of view that don't have to be a traditional A-level and university route with apprenticeships and everything else that's available. So that's great. And we encourage that as well at Pace. So no plan, you got into property. What was your role at Wiles, Peter Wiles?
My role was putting up the for sale boards,
right?
Photocopying, making tea and coffee.
All very important jobs.
Absolutely, yeah. So, they just set me on with whatever needed doing. I enjoyed doing the boards because it was summer and I could go out.
Yeah.
And, I'd be out and about.
But a good way of learning the ropes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Peter and Judy Wiles were really positive influence, and I'm always grateful for them. They gave me an opportunity because I quickly was given more responsibilities as well as doing those jobs. And at the time, they sold high value residential properties was their main business, but Peter had the background in commercial property, and I dealt with the high value properties, but let's say the customers for there needed a bit of tender loving care, let's say, and discussion about the refinery of homes, which just wasn't really my thing. And Peter and Judy sort of spotted that I probably didn't have that sort of patter that was needed for that. Yeah. And Peter dealt with some commercial property, and he had a guy called Alistair Campbell working for at the time.
Alistair Campbell?
Yeah.
Not the Alistair Campbell, obviously.
No, a different one. Just as big a character, though. And he said, go and help Alistair. He said, I think that'll suit you because I think worst effect, you're a bit more sort of route one than what we need in house sales, where you've got to be a bit more sort of patient. And that gave me an opportunity to start. And I worked with Alistair, who then moved on fairly quickly to a national company. So I very quickly had a lot of responsibility. And I was grateful Peter trusted me with that. And that was at a pretty young age.
I was just going to say, so how old would that have been?
I was
roughly?
About 18, 19.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it
he obviously saw
really
something
quickly.
in you, though, to give you that responsibility.
I think so. Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So how long were you doing that for then?
I worked for Peter for 3 years in total. Then I went to Wells Cundall.
Gosh, yeah, I remember that. That's going back
yeah.
a few years now, aren't we?
We are, yeah. So I went to Wells Cundall, and I was asked to go there, which I was proud to be sort of invited to go. So, and I worked at Wells Cundall for 3 years, and then I left Wells Cundall and I joined a company called Pathway Commercial. That was a business that had been set up primarily as a property management company, but sort of fledgling commercial agency. And the person who ran that or owned it was Bob Bearcock, who is well known locally. Yeah. And worked with Bob for several years. And that was in 1991. I went there, and then that ran on until 1996 when Garness Jones was formed.
So this obviously a big pivotal moment in your life. You formed your own business. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, in Pathway Commercial, I'd gone from sort of joining as a consultant. I was a bit young to be a consultant, but anyway, that was my title. But then I'd become a partner and shareholder in that business within about sort of 2 to 3 years of joining. And Bob Bearcock was working at his Pathway residential business. He wanted to move on. That was his forte. And my forte was the commercial. And we just went, different ways in terms of how we traded. Bob remained involved with Garness Jones. He supported that company in the initial stages. And it was a pivotal moment. I felt as though that was what was needed from a branding and marketing point of view. Yeah. We didn't think really Pathway Commercial worked, to be honest. And so we need to change the branding and get the setup right.
Branding, subject close to my heart. So very curious as to where the Jones comes from then. Garness is very obvious.
Yeah. Graham Jones was a partner in that business at that time. So fairly simple. It was sort of Garness Jones, and that was it.
And Graham is no longer involved in the business?
No, Graham worked with the business for the first few years, and he left the business in 2008. And he'd stopped becoming a partner earlier than that. So,
So Garness Jones, or the Garness Group, as you are now, a very successful property consultancy, as we've talked about. 1996 you were established, so quick maths tells me that you're coming up soon to 30 years, not quite, 3 years off. You've grown tremendously in that time, congratulations, and you're now a group of companies. So talk to me about that and our listeners. Tell us about Garness Group. I keep calling you Garness Jones, sorry. Garness Group, and who you are, what you do, and the different areas of services that you provide.
You've been forgiven, Garness, calling it Garness Jones, because that's what we were for 26 years. Sorry. So, and it's difficult to move on. Yeah. No, that was really the further involvement of the business, because Garness Jones has always been known as a commercial property practice. But unbeknown to many, we did a lot of residential property services, mainly revolving around block management and residential management. And I felt as though those businesses, which have become relatively substantial in our context, to have their own image and own identity and way forward. So the decision was made that we would separate those businesses off to allow them to have a different trading name and brand, as you know very well, which you've helped us with, thank you. We've now been trading for a year as those different brands, and it's been really successful.
Is there one particular area of the business that you're seeing more growth or potential with, and perhaps one area that's more challenging just in the current climate?
I'm pleased to say all three have prospered.
Touch wood, touching
yeah,
wood.
Yeah. So I think the commercial practice is the larger of the three businesses. I see a lot of scope to scale up our block management business. We are relatively small if you start to look on a regional and national level, and I think we can take that business up to a regional and national basis and really scale it up and grow it. The residential lettings business, grow residential, that's a really competitive market. But I see our strength that we've got the basics and the foundations right of that business. And I feel we're going to be quite sort of durable in that sector. And I think it will be the survival of the fittest when you've got so many competing in the same marketplace. And I think we're fairly fit.
That's good to hear. So what do you think differentiates you from some of your competitors?
I think the culture and values of the business. I've always been really strong on integrity. The property industry doesn't have a great reputation. And, frankly, the regulations around property are fairly loose. So, it can be abused. So I think it's really important that we maintain that, that integrity. I think the other area that sets us apart is that we give advice and opinion. It's not. It's easy in our industry to actually give a client some multiple choice as to what they do, whereas I think we're employed as experts in our field to give an opinion and give assertive guidance for the right outcomes.
So the Garness Group now, how many people are you responsible for?
We've got 31.
And if I was to ask one of those team members what you're like as a leader, what do you think they'd say?
Oh, that's a good question.
By the way, I haven't.
I don't mind if you did ask them, but crikey. I would say as a leader, I lead by example, and I'll get involved, and I will also have their backs as well.
Yeah, and do you think that comes from your sporting background? You talked earlier about the football and teamwork and the importance of teamwork and working as one.
100%. Yeah. I love being part of a team.
Yeah.
And so you describe me as a leader, and I guess I am, but I like to think there's many leaders in our business, and that's what I've learned from good teams, that you have lots of leaders. But yeah, I really see myself as part of the team rather than just somebody different.
Yeah. So very successful, obviously, and congratulations again on the success with Garness Group. But you're looking back over the last 30 years, let's say, in your career today. Is there anything you would have done differently looking back with the benefit of hindsight?
Lots of things.
Yeah. Anything you want to share?
I think, I'd be surprised if there's many business owners that haven't said they've made mistakes. And yeah, I think I've made sort of lots of mistakes. I think probably being a bit more sort of assertive in progress, progressing things quickly.
Would you say you're indecisive then?
Possibly, yes. I mean, I think it's interesting sometimes looking back at yourself. I was getting some, business sort of coaching advice, and I remember the person's, coming back and saying, well, actually, we've assessed and looked at everything and delegation is pretty poor. I thought I was a fantastic delegator until that point, so that really hurt. But when we walked and talked it through, I realised I wasn't. I delegated, but I didn't do it very well. So I think actually, in terms of what I would do different fundamentally, is probably being more aware of myself.
I think that comes with age, though, as well, and maturity and confidence. I think in being able to look yourself in the mirror and critique yourself fairly. And
yeah. I mean, that leads on to a point about what would I have done differently. I think probably listen to advice a little bit more. I was sort of historically maybe always knew best, and when I look back, I've had some really good advice from people that I respect that I've ignored.
Yeah,
and think that's probably one of the overriding points that I would do differently.
I'm nodding because I can relate to that. Because when I look back at some of the advice that I got, and I just thought I know better.
Yeah, yeah. No,
but again, that comes
yeah.
with maturity and
Yeah.
and being able to recognise that there are a lot of people who know best or better than you,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they've been there and done it, and
Yeah.
they just want to help at the end of the day.
yeah.
So linked to that then, is there anything maybe on a more personal level that you'd change about yourself if you could? Sorry, that's a really tough question,
You're
isn't
asking some
it?
really difficult questions. They're great. Change about myself.
Yeah. I ask it at interviews as well.
Yeah, I think that is it. That is. I wish I'd met my wife when I was younger.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, she's been a really, really positive influence, not just on life, but on business as well.
Does she work in the business?
No,
or does she say...
no. When she listens to this, she'll really laugh because my wife is a professional artist, and we are polar opposites in terms of how we operate on a day-to-day basis. Emma won't mind me saying she is chaotic,
right?
But she's
creative.
Yeah,
I work with some creative people who are not the most organised. They're quite chaotic, but they're very creative.
Yeah. But, it's a well-known phrase. It can be fairly lonely running a business, as you will relate to. So, just chatting to Emma about what's been happening, what the problems are, what the challenges are. I don't ask her to provide the answer, but just talking to her, she just comes at things from a completely different perspective to anybody else I know in business. And at times that's been great. It's been giving me light bulb moments. So,
a great sounding board for you. And sometimes it just helps just talking. You don't necessarily need an answer, just offloading, isn't it? Sometimes that just helps.
Yeah.
Away from the immediate team, you want to talk to people who are outside the business who can see things from that different perspective.
Yes, and I mean that's something I've had the benefit of in recent years is mentoring on an informal level.
Is that something you do through for entrepreneurs only is what I'm trying to say. Sorry for my tongue tied.
No.
Okay.
No. There's a person who sort of just we stumble across each other, he's a very experienced businessman, and he's just really sort of helpful. And so that's been just totally by chance, bit of luck, I think.
Okay.
But for entrepreneurs only, I've actually done some mentoring myself with a member from Entrepreneurs Only, and that seems. I'm not saying that from the point of view it's a generous thing to do. I learn a lot from mentoring somebody else.
Yeah.
And again, that's been a positive influence.
Yeah. So you mentioned FEO there. Are you involved in any other non-Garness Group organisations?
I am. Yes. I'm the chair of trustees for St Paul's Boxing Academy. So I'm really proud of that because St Paul's is something that I sort of stumbled across through a friend of a friend, and they just asked me to help with a lease and a leaky roof. I think about 8 or 9 years ago. And anyway, long story short on that one is that it needed some serious attention as an organisation, and I think it's fair to say it could have fallen over and disappeared. So myself and a group of other trustees formed it into a charity, overseeing a £1 million refurbishment of the gym. We've gone from about 200 members to about 500 members, and I would say that's one of the most rewarding things I've done. It's just great, the values that they have, and again, lessons I learned from them in terms of how they go about their business or their life is humbling. And I became chair in January, and I'm looking to sort of take that forward and get a plan set out for the next sort of 20 years plus for that organisation. It's been around for 70 years, by the way.
Has it? I didn't realise that.
Yeah,
I knew it'd been around a while, but not that long.
Yeah, and it's one of the last. What I say, old boxing clubs. There was the likes of Fish Trades and Hull Boys who are no more, and that became apparent that if we didn't do something to help St Paul's, that would have gone the same way, and it would have the city would have lost a really important sporting institution in that sport.
Yeah. And a facility for young people as well, for somewhere for them to go with something purposeful, do something purposeful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the testimonials which are on the website, I challenge you not to feel some emotion when you read some of the testimonials. It does some fantastic good, but it's not about difficulty or deprivation in life as well. There's a lot of positives in there. You can be a champion boxer, have natural talent, and you've got a place to succeed.
Yeah.
Be positive. Equally, you can have challenges in life and need somewhere to go. And where they go is that there's positive influence there by the champion boxers, and now more importantly it's physically a great building. It's really pleasant to be in there. It's got all the modern facilities.
It's near the Minster, isn't it? Hull Minster.
It is.
Yeah.
It's above the Market Hall.
Yes.
It's above the Market Hall, and it's been there since the early 1970s.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful building.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's funny that you mentioned, obviously, champion boxers. Hull has a very good track record in the boxing arena. Or ring, should I say?
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking Luke and Tommy actually trained at St Paul's?
Yes. They both were amateur boxers with St Paul's. And I think everybody sort of knows of their respective successes. And Luke Campbell was a member at St Paul's when he won his Olympic gold.
Yeah.
So that's where he trained. Mike Bromby coached him in that respect. But they're both big characters and both fantastic role models for sort of slightly different reasons. Tommy Coyle does a fantastic amount in the community. And Luke, with the profile of his Olympic gold, I think helps others understand they can achieve that top accolade or that top achievement. And going back to the people where they need a little bit of help in life, it's an inspiration to them.
Both very inspirational, yes, and great role models for the area.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the sporting thing then, obviously we talked earlier about the show jumping and the football, and more recently your involvement running or helping to run the St Paul's Boxing Academy. But if you weren't the owner, founder, managing director of Garness Group, what do you think you'd be doing?
I think I'd be in the army.
Interesting.
I was really interested in the army when I was younger in my late teens because I like sport. I like teamwork. I like physical endurance. That you sort of experience from those activities. And I'm really sort of quite regimented as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a routine person. Yeah.
So if I had asked one of your team members, they'd have probably said that.
Yeah.
They may have done.
Actually,
They
now
may
I
have
think about it. Yeah. They might not have been so polite.
You're obviously doing something right, though, because it's the company's so successful. Yeah. So on that subject then, we talked earlier about coming up in 3 years' time to 30 years on the door. What's the future look like for Garness Group? What are your plans? Anything you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the future's really bright. And I think that's mainly because of the people that work in the organisation and are the organisation. So we've got a relatively young team, apart from me. And I have a style where, I trust in them to take responsibility. One of our values is accountability, but it's without blame. So it allows people the freedom to develop themselves, try different things within the business. If it doesn't work, we learn from it, rather than getting told off for it. So I think that approach allows your team to develop and your leaders to emerge, and for people to find their natural place and be the best versions of themselves. And so in terms of the future, we're a people business. So you need that. And I think if you just purely manage people, that's all that they'll do. They will respond to being managed. Whereas I think if you let them have some freedom, lead themselves, which is probably the hardest thing, that will ensure the future success of the business.
Allowing them to develop and find their own path to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because what I have learnt is that, people won't, and you probably don't want them to do things exactly the same as you.
No.
You need them to be different. You need differentials. You need diversity in your business. So in terms of the future, we're on a growth spurt, and that will sort of continue. The business grew about 20% in the last year, which is significant,
Especially in the current climate.
Yeah. So going back to one of the lessons I learned in the recession between sort of 2008 and 2010, business actually grew in that period, and that taught me a lesson. It was about service level, bit of determination, not letting outside factors bother you. But yeah, back to the future, which I'm sort of keen on. We will expand, geographically, as well as in terms of the volume of work that we do.
And do you see that expansion being sort of the hinterland to where you are now, currently in the region, or do you see yourself maybe moving just further afield completely?
No, hinterland.
Right.
Yeah, I think it'd be an organic expansion, of the different operations. And I think what I've really enjoyed in the last 12 months or so, looking at the dynamics of the different businesses, and it's just telling me it was absolutely the right thing to do, because how pure block management will expand will be really different to Garness Jones, and will in turn be different to Grow Residential.
Yeah.
And I've got leaders within those businesses that are shaping up that thinking. So they will just grow in entirely different ways, I think.
Yeah. Well, it certainly sounds exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing your continued growth, and hopefully we'll be playing a part in it. Sorry, should I say, here at Pace. I will get my words out. So thank you, Dave. Thanks for sharing your stories and all the interesting insights with us. I'm not sure if you know, but we ask every guest to leave a question for the next guest. We've stolen it blatantly from Steve Bartlett's Diary of a CEO. So we do have a question that has been left from our previous guest. And the previous guest didn't know who it was or he was leaving it for. So are you ready for your question?
Go on, yep.
What would your mother say is your most irritating trait?
First, it needs to be plural.
How much time have we got?
My most irritating trait. Wow, you do ask some great questions.
No, I didn't ask this one.
Oh no, you didn't know.
Interesting. No. He said mother as well, but he did.
Yeah, well, he's right on that front. Irritate. I think not prepared to be told, and she tells me I'll do the opposite.
You see, even now, even when you're a grown man, you would.
Yeah, I'd probably more so.
Yeah. But you touched on that earlier, though, didn't you? About not taking people's advice and thinking you know better.
Yeah. So it was probably sound advice back in the day. But
and is you like when your wife's listening to this, she's going to be nodding and laughing at the same time?
Well, no, because she doesn't tell me. You see, she's switched on. She doesn't try and tell me. If she tries, she knows if she tries to tell me, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, but what you're not realising is she's telling you, but she's just manipulating it so that you think it's your idea.
That's what I said.
That's what we do.
She's clever. She's clever. Yeah.
Well, on that note then, seriously, thank you. Thanks for your time. I've really enjoyed our chat this morning. And thank you to you for listening. As always, we'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any suggestions about who you'd like us to interview, or if you've got any comments or feedback, please do get in touch via our normal social media channels. And I look forward to talking to you again next month. Until then, bye-bye.